Hello to all. Today my topic is sympatholytics. So sympatholytic agent, you can also call them as adrenergic receptor blockers or adrenergic receptor antagonist or anti-adrenergic drugs, all means one and the same. Now, adrenergic blockers. So before talking about blockers, first you should have a clear concept that how exactly that adrenergic actions are being produced. These sympathetic actions are being produced. See, these sympathetic actions are mainly produced via the activation of receptors. Yes, we have got two adrenergic receptors. They are alpha receptors and beta receptors. So for blocking sympathetic action, we need to block these receptors. Okay, so adrenergic blockers are nothing but these are the agents that will cause blockage of the adrenergic receptors, that is alpha and beta receptors. Now, there are few drugs that causes blockage of only alpha receptor. So we call them as alpha blockers. Similarly, there are few drugs that will cause blockage of beta receptor, that antagonizes only beta receptors. To them we call them as beta blockers. Okay, so now you people have understood adrenergic blockers means these are the agents that will cause blockage of adrenergic receptors, that is alpha and beta receptors. And adrenergic blockers are of two types. We have got two classification of adrenergic blockers. First class is alpha blockers and second class is beta blockers. So we will now start our discussion with alpha blockers. Now before starting the alpha blockers, we should know about the alpha receptors. So we have got two types of alpha receptors. They are alpha 1 receptor and alpha 2 receptor. Next, the location where we can find alpha receptors are, they are found on the blood vessels, eyes, prostatic urethra, nasal mucosa, and lastly bladder trigone. We can find alpha receptor in various other areas also, but for now, just for an example, I have given a few list of areas where we can find alpha adrenergic receptors. Now suppose this is a blood vessels. On the blood vessel you will find the alpha receptor. Okay, and when on the blood vessel this alpha receptor gets activated, this activation will result in vasoconstriction. Okay, and you know what happens when the blood vessel constrict? Yes, they increases the blood pressure, hypertension occurs. But when we block the alpha receptor, it results in vasodilation. So alpha blockers have got a role in treatment of hypertension. How they can treat hypertension? By blocking the alpha receptor present on the blood vessel. Okay, next, suppose this is our eye. Okay, I hope you can understand it is looking like an eye only. In green color I have made iris, and in the center the white color is your pupil. And you might be knowing iris have got two important muscles. They are the radial muscle of iris, also known as the dilator pupillae, and we have got circular muscle of iris, also known as the sphincter pupillae. So this circular muscle is under the control of the parasympathetic system, whereas the radial muscle is under the control of your sympathetic system. Okay, so on the radial muscle we have alpha receptor. And what happens when the alpha receptor present on the radial muscle of iris gets activated? Yes, the contraction occurs, which leads to increase in the size of the pupil. This condition is known as mydriasis. Now, suppose we are blocking the alpha receptor over here in the eye, it will result in miosis. Miosis means it will reduce the size of the pupil. Now, under what condition this miosis will be useful? Yes, it can be made useful in the treatment of glaucoma. Okay, next, suppose this is your prostatic urethra. I believe you can understand. In red color I have made the prostate, and at the center that the entire line is your urethra. So this prostatic urethra have also got the alpha receptor. I believe you people know this prostatic urethra is mainly present in males only. Okay, so this prostatic urethra have got alpha receptor. When this alpha receptor gets activated, it will reduce the urine output. Okay, so urine flow will be reduced. But this problem will be too much problematic in the person suffering from BHP, that is benign hypertrophy of the prostate. Okay. Now when we give alpha blockers, it will increase the urine outflow. Okay. Next, they are also present in the bladder. Suppose this is your bladder. Bladder have got two important muscles. This is the detrusor muscle and this one is the trigone. So on the bladder trigone you will find alpha receptor, and on the bladder trigone, when that alpha receptor gets activated, it will cause constriction, closure, because of which the urine flow will be reduced. Okay, see, to increase the urine outflow, it depends upon both detrusor muscle as well as the trigone. Okay, to increase the outflow, we need to contract the bladder. We need to contract the detrusor muscle and we need to relax the trigone. But what is happening over here, when alpha receptor present on the trigone gets activated, it will contract the trigone. For increasing urine output, you need to relax the trigone. Okay, so activation of alpha receptor on the bladder trigone will reduce the urine outflow. But when you give any kind of alpha blocker, it will cause relaxation of trigone and urine outflow will be increased. Okay. So, but this increase does not depend upon only relaxation of the trigone. In addition of that, we need to cause contraction of the detrusor also. So, both will coordinate and they will be increasing the urine outflow. Next, they are also present in the nasal mucosa. I believe you can understand my image of the nose. It is a kind of nostrils. Okay. Now see, if any person is suffering from a common cold, so what will happen? The nose will be filled up with a dirty thing, that mucosa. Okay, the nose will be filled with mucus. Okay. See, normally also our nose is always wet. Okay. But when a person is suffering from common cold, the wetness increases, the mucosa increases. Okay. So suppose this is a mucus. Okay. I hope you can understand my diagram. Okay, so our nostrils is filled with mucosa. Now how this mucus has been produced? Because the blood supply. When the blood supply is there to the nose, from that blood this mucus will be produced. Now when we want to reduce the mucus, what we can do? We should reduce the blood supply. Okay, so now what I am showing in this image is, we have got a blood supply to the nose because of which mucus has been formed. Now this blood vessels have also got alpha receptor. When alpha receptor are getting activated, it will produce vasoconstriction. When vasoconstriction occurs, this mucosa thing will be reduced. Okay, that will be removed out from our nose. So alpha adrenergic agonistic agent are widely used in the problem of nasal congestion. Nasal congestion means nose will be filled with mucosa. So we need to decongest, we need to remove that mucosa. So in that case we can use alpha adrenergic agonist. Okay, remember I am stressing on agonist. Adrenergic agonistic agent can be used for the treatment of nasal congestion. But when we give alpha blocker, it will worsen the case. So in case of nasal mucosa, any person suffering from common cold, we should not give them alpha blockers, because in that case the mucosa will be too much increased, because it causes vasodilation. Vasodilation means more blood supply, so more mucosa formed in the nose. Okay, so these are few things regarding the alpha blockers. Okay. Next, in all these areas, whatever I have shown you, the blood vessels, eyes, prostatic urethra, nasal mucosa and bladder trigone, in all these areas you can find both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. Okay, but there is one more area where only alpha 2 is present, that is prejunctionally. Alpha 2 receptors are also present prejunctionally. Now what is this prejunctional alpha 2 receptor? We'll check out now. Now suppose this is a presynaptic neuron, and this presynaptic neuron contains the vesicles where neurotransmitters are present. Next we have got a postsynaptic neuron where you expect the receptors. Okay, now I have written a few receptors like alpha 1, alpha 2 and beta 1. These all receptors are present post-junctionally or post-synaptically. Post-synaptically or post-junctionally means which is present after the synapse. Okay, so normally what you expect, some kind of action potential should occur, because of which the presynaptic neuron gets activated and it will cause release of the neurotransmitters, and these released neurotransmitters should interact with the receptors, that's alpha 1, alpha 2 and beta 1 receptor, and actions will be produced, isn't it? This is the normal thing, you know. Now what extra thing I need to say is about the alpha 2 receptors present pre-junctionally. Okay, so pre-junctionally means the receptors which are present in the presynaptic neuron, the neuron from where the neurotransmitters are being produced and released. In this area, when any receptor is present, so we call them as pre-junctional neuron. Pre-junctional receptors. So you can see alpha 2 is a kind of pre-junctional receptors because it is present in the neuron from which neurotransmitters are released. But alpha 1 is not a pre-junctional receptor. Beta 1 is not a pre-junctional receptor because they are not present in the presynaptic neuron. They are present in the postsynaptic neuron. Okay. So this is about the location. What more distinction feature of this alpha 2 receptor is, this alpha 2 receptor, when it gets activated, activation of this alpha 2 receptor, particularly pre-junctional, I should say, activation of alpha 2 receptor, you can assume the receptor present post-junctionally, but you should mention it clearly, pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor. What happens when pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor gets activated? This activation will inhibit the release of neurotransmitter in the synapse. Okay, so whenever pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor gets activated, it will inhibit the release of the neurotransmitter in the synapse. Next, what will happen when the release of neurotransmitter is inhibited? It will inhibit the activation of the post-junctional receptor also. Okay, so this is an extra thing you should know regarding the pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor. See, alpha 2 receptors are present in all the areas, in all the locations where alpha 1 receptors are present. But apart from this, alpha 2 receptors are also present pre-junctionally. And what is the role of this pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor? The role of this pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor is, whenever they get activated, it will inhibit the release of the neurotransmitter in the synapse. That's it. I hope you all understood regarding this alpha 1 and alpha 2 receptors. Next, we will come to the actual topic, the alpha adrenergic blockers. Alpha adrenergic blockers, we have understood that these are the agents that will mainly cause blockage of the alpha receptor. There are few drugs that will block both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. To them we call as non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers because they will not produce any kind of selectivity like no I want to block only alpha 1, no I want to block only alpha 2, no, there is no selectivity. So there are few drugs that will block both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptors. So to them we call as non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Whereas there are few drugs that will block either alpha 1 or alpha 2 receptor. So to them we call as selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Okay, so now you came to know that alpha adrenergic blockers are of two types. First one is non-selective blocker and second one is selective blocker. Okay, non-selective are the agents that will block both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor, whereas selective alpha adrenergic blockers means these are the agents that will block either alpha 1 receptor or alpha 2 receptor. The agents that will block only alpha 1 receptor, we call them as alpha 1 adrenergic blockers, and the drugs that will block only alpha 2 receptor are known as alpha 2 adrenergic blockers. Okay, so this thing is clear, I hope so. Next, there is only single example of this alpha 2 adrenergic blocker, that is yohimbine, and this yohimbine does not have any clinical importance. Okay, so for now we will not discuss any more regarding alpha 2 adrenergic blockers. So we have constricted our classification. Now we will classify alpha adrenergic blockers as non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers and selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers means these are the agents that will block both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. Whereas the selective adrenergic blockers are the agents that will block only alpha 1 receptor. Okay, because we don't have any kind of usefulness by yohimbine, that is selective alpha 2 receptor adrenergic blockers. So we will not discuss about it. Okay, so now from now onwards, whenever I will be saying that selective alpha adrenergic blockers means it should come in your mind that is alpha 1 receptor blocker, because alpha 2 we don't have any use, so why unnecessarily, why to study that, isn't it? Okay, so non-selective means both blocking alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. Selective means that will block only and only alpha 1 adrenergic receptors. Okay, now suppose this is a blood vessel. On the blood vessel, you can find both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptors. Now, what happens when these alpha 1 and alpha 2 receptors are activated? On activation, it will lead to, yes, vasoconstriction. This thing you know. Okay. Next, what we will do now, this time we will block these receptors. Suppose we are giving a non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers, so it will block both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. Suppose we are giving selective alpha adrenergic blockers, means it will block only alpha 1 receptor. So what might be the result? Yes, blocking of alpha receptor will lead to vasodilation. But there is a difference in the vasodilation. The diameter, or you can say the strength of vasodilation, is more in case of non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers. But in case of selective alpha adrenergic blockers, they will also produce vasodilation, but the strength of vasodilation is less as compared to the non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers. The reason behind this is, in case of selective alpha adrenergic blockers, we are blocking only alpha 1 receptor, but alpha 2 receptors are not blocked. We are not antagonizing alpha 2 receptor. So some kind of vasoconstriction may be mediated via alpha 2 receptor. But in case of non-selective alpha adrenergic blocker, we are blocking both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2. So we are not giving any chance in any area to produce vasoconstriction. Okay, so vasodilation is produced by both selective as well as non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers, but non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers are producing more stronger vasodilation as compared to the selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Since more strong vasodilation is produced by non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers, they are mainly used in the treatment of severe hypertension. Okay, because severe hypertension will require a more competent, more strong vasodilation. Okay, so non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers are mainly used in the treatment of severe hypertension, whereas these selective alpha adrenergic blockers can be used in the treatment of mild to moderate hypertension. Okay, so this is the thing. Okay, this is a little difference. Next we shall see some more important differences between these alpha adrenergic blockers. No doubt they are blocking alpha receptor. One class is blocking both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2, whereas the another class is blocking only alpha 1 receptor. We can assume that so many similarities are there, but there are few differences also. And one difference right now you observed, non-selective blockers will be used in the treatment of severe hypertension, whereas the selective blockers are used in the treatment of mild to moderate hypertension. Now another difference I'll show you. Suppose this is above you can see that is a pre-synaptic neuron and below is the post-synaptic neuron. You can see in the pre-synaptic neuron the pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor is present, whereas the post-synaptic neuron you can see both alpha 1, alpha 2 as well as beta 1 receptors will be present. Okay, so right now we will be talking about the non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers means they will block, yes, what kind of receptors? Both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. Okay, they will block alpha 1 and alpha 2 receptor post synaptically, plus the pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor will also be blocked. What is the main role of pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor? The main role of pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor is to inhibit the release of the neurotransmitters. But when we block this alpha 2 receptor, large amount of neurotransmitters will be released. Okay, now whatever neurotransmitter is being released in the synapse, what will be their main role? Yes, after they are present in the synapse, they will like to interact with the post-synaptic receptors. Okay, now in the post-synaptic receptors, we had alpha 1, alpha 2 and beta 1 receptor. But since we have given a non-selective alpha adrenergic blocker, we have blocked alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. So, this neurotransmitter, this catecholamine is left under the mercy of only one receptor, that is beta 1 receptor. So all will come and all will interact with the beta 1 receptor. So large amount of activation of beta 1 receptor will take place. Now what will happen when there will be activation of beta 1 receptor? Yes, what is the location of beta 1 receptor? It is present in our heart. and too much activation of beta 1 receptor will lead to tachycardia. Okay, so now previously we knew that non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers are very good. They are very much strong vasodilator and can be used in the treatment of severe hypertension, but the drawback is it can produce tachycardia. But same thing if we compare it with the selective alpha adrenergic blockers. I have given a same diagram and we are talking about now the selective alpha adrenergic blockers. So the selective alpha adrenergic blockers, it will block only alpha 1 receptor. It will not produce any kind of blockade in alpha 2 receptor, nor pre-junctionally, neither post-junctionally. So what will happen? Alpha 2 pre-junction alpha 2 receptor is not blocked, so it will limit the release of neurotransmitter, so it will not move like a wild buffalo and want to interact with all the receptor post junctionally. No, this thing will not happen in case of selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Neurotransmitters will be released but in small limit, and it will interact with both alpha 2 as well as beta 1 receptor. Okay, so the final result is it will not lead to any kind of tachycardia. Okay, so for now we have understood that alpha adrenergic blockers are of two types: non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers and selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers means they will block both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. Selective alpha adrenergic blockers means they will block only alpha 1 receptor. Non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers, we should remember two important points. First one is it can be used in the treatment of severe hypertension because very strong vasodilation has been produced. Secondly, it can induce tachycardia because it is blocking the pre-junctional alpha 2 adrenergic receptor. But in case of selective alpha adrenergic blockers, it can be used in the treatment of mild to moderate hypertension because the vasodilation produced is less strong as compared to the non-selective alpha adrenergic blocker. Plus, the benefit is we don't have any risk of tachycardia in case of selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Okay, so I hope you people understood till here. Now we will proceed with the non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers, means the agents that will block both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptors. Now this non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers, again we have got two types depending upon their mechanism. First of all, we have got competitive blockers, and second we have got a non-competitive blockers. Now what is the difference between these? Okay, so I'll be explaining by a few simple drawings what I have made, what I have tried to make. Suppose this is a kind of a neuron. On this neuron we have got alpha receptor. It might be alpha 1, alpha 2, anything. Okay, we have got alpha receptor. And suppose this is our competitive blocker. The competitive antagonist means it will it will come and bind the active site of the receptor, and it will not allow any other agonist to come and bind with it. Plus it will not produce any kind of interaction with the receptor. It will just come and it will sit on the receptor. That's it. But in presence of this competitive blocker, when we give any agonistic agent like your norepinephrine or epinephrine or dopamine, any agent if we give, so what will happen? This agonistic agent will kick off this competitive blocker and it will itself interact with the receptor. Okay, so competitive blockers basically means there is a competition between an agonist and an antagonist. Antagonists are nothing but our competitive blockers. Okay, so whoever is present in higher amount will produce the action. Competitive blockers, if they are present in higher amount, they will cover up the receptor and no action will be produced. But when an agonist is present in higher concentration, it will kick off, it will remove off the competitive blocker and they will interact with the receptor and produce the action. Okay, so this is about the competitive blocker. Now we'll check out what happens in a non-competitive blocker. Suppose again this is a neuron and this is a kind of alpha adrenergic receptor, and suppose this is a non-competitive blocker. Non-competitive means there won't be any kind of competition between the agonist and the antagonist. So what this non-competitive blocker will do means it will interact with the receptor and it will completely destroy the receptor. Okay, and if you are providing an agonist, the action will not be produced. Even if you are increasing the concentration of agonist, then also action will not be produced. Why? Because this non-competitive blocker will be destroying the receptor completely, and again if this neuron to get the previous action, again new receptors has to be produced on this particular piece of neuron. So this is known as non-competitive blockers. Okay, now from this idea, from this mechanism of action, what you people understood? Yes, we understood that non-competitive blockers will block the receptor, it will destroy the receptor completely. So we have got a long duration of action with non-competitive blockers, but with competitive blocker, short duration of action. Okay, so competitive blockers will produce action for a short duration of time, whereas non-competitive blockers will produce action for a longer duration of time. Okay, now again we will revise. We are talking about non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers means they will block both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. So they can be used in the treatment of hypertension. What kind of hypertension? Severe or mild to moderate? Yes, they are used in the treatment of severe hypertension. Till here both tracks were going same. Now the difference is we have got competitive blockers as well as non-competitive blockers. Yes, both competitive as well as non-competitive blockers can be used in the treatment of severe hypertension. But competitive blockers will produce treatment of severe hypertension for a short duration of time. Whereas the non-competitive blockers can be used in the treatment of severe hypertension for a longer duration of time. Okay, now here are a few examples I have given of these classes. Example of competitive blockers is phentolamine, ergotamine, ergotoxin, dihydroergotamine, dihydroergotoxin and chlorpromazine. Okay, and we have got a very single example of non-competitive blockers. They have phenoxybenzamine. That's it. Okay. Now, till now we have understood that both are used in the treatment of severe hypertension. Competitive blockers are used for short duration of time. Non-competitive blockers will produce action for a longer duration of time. Okay. Now we will check out the uses where they are used. Competitive blockers can be used in a treatment of cheese reaction as well as for clonidine withdrawal reactions. Okay. So in these two cases there will be severe hypertension. But severe hypertension will be not for a longer duration. For a short time there will be severe hypertension. Therefore we can treat these two problems with the help of competitive blocker. Whereas the use of non-competitive blocker is it can be used in case of pheochromocytoma. Okay. Now what these things are we'll see one by one. But one thing you should remember, these all three things, that is the cheese reaction, the clonidine withdrawal reaction as well as pheochromocytoma, there will be a very severe hypertension. Okay, so we want non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers. In these three situations we cannot use selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Here there will be very high hypertension, we require very strong vasodilator. So for this reason we are using a non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers. Okay, but this severe hypertension, pheochromocytoma will be for a long time since it is a tumor. But cheese reaction and clonidine withdrawal reaction, as you can see, both are kind of reactions. Reactions are not occurring for a long time. Reactions occur for a short time, and in short time it will produce severe hypertension and it will produce a disastrous effect. So we can treat these things with the help of a shorter acting drug such as competitive blockers. Now we will see these all situations one by one. First of all, we'll check out about the pheochromocytoma. In this top left hand side, one bubble I have made. That bubble is nothing but I was trying to make a adrenal medulla. Okay, so assume that is a kind of adrenal medulla. So pheochromocytoma, basically it is a kind of a tumor of adrenal medulla in which large amount of epinephrine and norepinephrine will be produced. When large amount of epinephrine and norepinephrine is produced in the adrenal medulla, so where they will go? Obviously they will move to your blood circulation, they will interact with the blood vessels. Okay, and what will happen when this epinephrine, norepinephrine or any other kind of catecholamine, when they interact with the alpha receptor present on the blood vessel, it will lead to, yes, it will lead to vasoconstriction, and because of vasoconstriction there will be a severe hypertension. Okay, and since it is a tumor, So this tumor will not for a half day or 1 hour or 2 days or 3 days. It is a tumor for longer period of time. There will be continuous release of catecholamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine. Continuously it will be produced from the adrenal medulla, and continuously they will be interacting with the alpha receptors of the blood vessels, and continuously there will be vasoconstriction. So you can imagine how severe hypertension will be produced. So for treating pheochromocytoma, the drug of choice will be, yes, our hero came, the phenoxybenzamine. So phenoxybenzamine, why we are selecting phenoxybenzamine for pheochromocytoma means because it is a very strong vasodilator, because it blocks both alpha 1 as well as alpha 2 receptor. It is a very strong vasodilator. Plus, since pheochromocytoma, it is a problem that occurs for a long period of time. So we want a drug that will produce action for a longer period of time. So we are giving phenoxybenzamine. We are not giving a competitive blocker. Okay, we cannot give competitive blocker over here, because if we give competitive blocker means this norepinephrine, epinephrine will come and it will kick off the competitive blocker. So we don't require any kind of competition. We cannot take risk of the competition. We just want to destroy, we not want to inhibit this alpha receptor over here. So we are giving phenoxybenzamine, which is a kind of non-competitive alpha adrenergic blocker, plus it is a kind of non-selective alpha adrenergic blocker. Okay, it will produce a very strong vasodilation and it will produce action for a longer duration of time. Therefore phenoxybenzamine is used in a treatment of pheochromocytoma. Okay, yes, it is producing vasodilation. So this thing has been solved. Our non-competitive blockers is used in the treatment of pheochromocytoma. This thing we have understood. Next we will check out what is this Cheese reaction and clonidine withdrawal reaction. Okay, in both these cases. So now we'll talk about cheese reaction. So what exactly is this cheese reaction? Cheese, you people might be knowing a normal cheese, what you eat, you apply it on bread and you sandwich the cheese and you will consume it. So this cheese contains large amount of an amino acid known as tyramine. Okay, so whenever you consume cheese, suppose this is your GI tract, and whenever you try to eat this cheese, it will undergo digestion and broken down into pieces, and among those broken down component, one of the important thing of our importance over here is the tyramine. All the tyramine will appear in your GI tract. Okay, and next after digestion, the next step will be the absorption. So now next thing, the tyramine needs to be moved into your blood vessels, into the blood circulation. But what is happening over here means the lining of your GI tract contains an important important enzyme, that is monoamino oxidase. And so monoamino oxidase, the name only says it will cause oxidation of the monoamine, and tyramine is also kind of a monoamine. So it will metabolize the tyramine and it will destroy the tyramine and will come out next day morning. Okay, so this is not a problem. This is not a cheese reaction. It is a normal thing. Now we'll talk about cheese reaction. What exactly happens in cheese reaction? See, if there is a person who is suffering from depression. See, depression is now so much common thing. All are suffering from depression because of this lockdown. Okay, it's not lockdown anymore now. Because of this COVID-19, because of some personal issues, now all are suffering from depression. Few person who is suffering from a severe kind of depression, they will be under the treatment of antidepressant agents. One of them is the MAO inhibitors, that is monoamino oxidase inhibitors. So these agents is said to be used in the treatment of depression. But how it is treating? It is treating by inhibiting the enzyme monoamino oxidase. Okay, and it will cause oxidation. It will inhibit the enzyme monoamino oxidase. Now suppose a person who is suffering from depression and he is under the treatment of monoamino oxidase inhibitor, and if such an individual consume cheese containing large amount of tyramine, then what will happen? This tyramine, which is present in your GI tract, it was supposed to get metabolized by monoamino oxidase, but since we have given monoamino oxidase inhibitor, this enzyme will not be working for metabolizing the tyramine. So next what will happen? This tyramine will move to your blood circulation. And you know tyramine, where you have studied tyramine, yes, tyramine is a kind of indirectly acting catecholamine. It will produce displacement of this catecholamine. It might be epinephrine or norepinephrine. It will displace them from the vesicle into the synapse. So large amount of this catecholamine like epinephrine and norepinephrine will be available in the blood circulation, and here they will interact with the vessels, it will interact with the alpha receptor and it will produce a vasoconstriction. Vasoconstriction means there will be a severe vasoconstriction, there will be a severe hypertension produced as long as theremin is present. Okay, theremin is not produced continuously because you are not eating cheese continuously. How much cheese you have eaten, that much amount of theremin will be produced, and this theremin will not get metabolized. It will increase the catecholamine level in the blood, because of which, as a result of which, a severe hypertension will be produced. But that hypertension will be for a short duration of time. So we require a treatment of severe hypertension for a short duration of time. So who will be our hero? Yes, our hero will be the competitive alpha receptor blocker. So that is your phentolamine. Okay, it came just like Rajnikant. Phentolamine can be used in a treatment of cheese reaction. See, phentolamine is one of the example of the competitive alpha adrenergic blocker. Okay, so in this manner, I think you people understood about the cheese reaction, what actually happens over here. Cheese reaction is a good example of drug food interaction. Okay, because of which severe hypertension will be produced. When we give phentolamine, it will produce vasodilation. Okay, and action will be for a shorter duration of time. Therefore, for cheese reaction, we can give phentolamine. Next, we will see about clonidine withdrawal reaction. What happens over here? So, suppose this is a presynaptic neuron and this one is your postsynaptic neuron. And both pre as well as postsynaptic neuron contains receptor. I hope you people know we have got alpha 1, alpha 2 and beta 1 receptor present postsynaptically, whereas pre-junctionally we have got alpha 2 receptor. Okay, now what is this clonidine? I hope you people know clonidine is a kind of alpha 2 adrenergic agonist. When suppose a person is continuously taking alpha adrenergic agonist, that is clonidine, okay, continuously, and means clonidine is mainly used in the treatment of hypertension as such. Okay, so any person who is suffering from a high blood pressure and a doctor prescribes him clonidine for nearly 6 to 8 months. Okay, so for 6 to 8 months, what will happen? This clonidine will be producing activation of this alpha 2 receptor. Okay, now you know this presynaptic neuron have got a vesicle where all the catecholamines have been present. Okay, and for 6 months when clonidine was been consumed, for those 6 months the pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor was very much active. And what is the role of this pre-junctional alpha 2 receptor? Yes, they act as brakes. Brakes means they will not cause this neurotransmitters to get released into the synapse. As a result of this, large amount of receptors will be produced. Okay, this is known as upregulation of the receptors. See, in the postsynaptic neuron, since these receptors are not getting activated by any kind of neurotransmitters, they have not received any kind of neurotransmitter, as a result of which upregulation of the receptors takes place. So because of this, instead of 3 receptors, nearly 10 to 15 receptors are available here on the postsynaptic neuron. Okay, now it was happening over here. Now suppose after 6 months the person has stopped taking clonidine, then what will happen? Yes, before brakes were there because of clonidine, now you have stopped clonidine, the brakes will be filled. Means large number of neurotransmitter will get released and they will interact with these many receptors. They will interact with alpha 1 receptor, alpha 2 receptor as well as beta 1 receptor. See, when alpha 1, alpha 2 receptor gets activated, what will happen? It will produce vasoconstriction. So you can assume so much amount of severe hypertension will be produced. Okay, instead of 2 receptor, it will now interact with 10 receptors. So 10 times the vasoconstriction will be produced and 10 times hypertension can be assumed. So much severe hypertension will be produced. Okay, so for treatment of this thing also, we are using our competitive blocker such as phentolamine. Okay, so phentolamine or any other competitive blocker can be used in the treatment of clonidine withdrawal reaction. Okay, so as long as that person was consuming clonidine, the blood pressure was normal, but when he stopped taking clonidine, a huge hypertension was being produced, and so much huge hypertension was being produced because of upregulation of the receptors. Okay, so this is about the clonidine withdrawal reaction. I hope you people understood regarding this. So this thing we understood now. Competitive blockers can be used in the treatment of cheese reaction and clonidine withdrawal reaction, whereas the non-competitive blockers can be used in the treatment of pheochromocytoma. Okay, so now we are done with the non-selective alpha adrenergic blockers. I hope you people understood. If you didn't understand, then please you see the entire video. Okay, now we will start with the selective alpha adrenergic blocker, that is our alpha 1 receptor blocker. It can be used in the treatment of mild to moderate hypertension. Okay, Now, this is the list of the examples, the drugs coming under the class of alpha 1 adrenergic blockers. And the common thing about these drugs are they ends with zosine. They have got a suffix zosine, like prazosine, terazosine, doxazosine, alfuzosin. Two different things, tamsulosin and silodosin you can find. And I have typed it in a different color. In red color I have written, because some difference is there in tamsulosin and silodosin as compared to these other four zosines, that is prazosine, terazosine, doxazosine and alfuzosin. See, till now we have understood that it can be used in a treatment of mild to moderate hypertension. That is done. But we have got various other areas where alpha 1 receptor are also present. And it can be. So what exactly happens in this BHP, in this benign hypertrophy of the prostate? The name only says there will be hypertrophy of the prostate, means there will be enlargement of the prostate, and because of that enlargement of the prostate there will be problem in the urine outflow, or you can say there will be decreased urine outflow. So that BHP treatment can be done with the help of alpha 1 receptor blocker. See, this alpha 1 receptor blockers, it cannot completely treat this BHP. It can produce, you can say, symptomatic relief. Okay, symptomatic, because there will be a decreased urine outflow by causing relaxation of the alpha 1 receptor present on the prostatic urethra. You can little bit increase the urine outflow. That's it. So you can say we can produce a symptomatic treatment by alpha 1 adrenergic blocker. So these all drugs, that is prazosine, terazosine, doxazosine, alfuzosin, tamsulosin as well as sildosin, all these drugs can be used in the treatment of BHP. Okay. Now see, hypertension mainly occurs in old age, in people who are more than 45 years of age. Okay, in those person, no, this is like a very common. 80 to 90% of the population who are above 45 to 50 years of age, they are suffering from hypertension. And this problem, the second problem, that is BHP, benign hypertrophy of the prostate, this is also a problem of old age. Okay, so by giving a single alpha 1 receptor blocker, we can treat both the problems, that is mild to moderate hypertension plus the benign hypertrophy of the prostate. Okay, so single drug, double action you can say. But the problem with this mild to moderate, the problem with this agent is they will produce postural hypotension. Postural means depending upon the position. The person was sitting and suddenly if he stands, hypotension will occur. The blood pressure will fall so drastically that the person will fall down. Okay. And if that old age person, means normally these drugs are given to old age person, and in that old age, if that person, if he falls down, there will be fracture and there will be too much problem. Okay, so a side effect of this alpha 1 adrenergic blocker is, no doubt it treats mild to moderate hypertension, but the side effect is it produces a postural hypotension. Okay, so it is said that these alpha 1 receptor blockers like prazosine and terazosine, they are usually given at night time. Okay, at bedtime. So you should take the dinner, you consume this prazosine or terazosine, whatever the doctor prescribes you, and you just go to bed and just sleep. That's it. So this is the only solution for this problem of postural hypotension. But the thing is, if the person is suffering from only benign hypertrophy of prostate, and to him this postural hypertension side effect will not a good thing. See, if the person is suffering from both hypertension and BHP, we can prescribe them alpha 1 blockers such as prazosine and terazosine. But if the person is suffering from only BHP and okay, BHP is getting treated, but the blood pressure is reducing like anything, that is not a good thing, isn't it? So later on it was found that alpha 1 receptors are again of two types, that is alpha 1A and alpha 1B. Next, what is the location of these two receptors? Alpha 1B is mainly present in the blood vessels. Okay, B for alpha 1B and B for blood vessels. In this manner you can remember. Alpha 1A is present in the urinary bladder. You can remember it like a prostatic urethra. Okay, so alpha 1A is mainly present in the urinary bladder and alpha 1B is present in the blood vessel. Now we have got two drugs which have got different suffix, that is tamsulosin and silodosin. They will particularly selectively block alpha 1A receptor. Okay, so they can be used when only BHP is the problem. Whereas the other drug, that is prazosin, terazosin, doxazosin as well as alfuzosin, they can produce blockage of both alpha 1A as well as alpha 1B receptor. Okay, so when the problem is both hypertension along with BHP, we can give this prazosin, terazosin, doxazosin and alfuzosin. But if the problem is only BHP and we don't want the adverse effect of postural hypotension, so in that case we can give the selective alpha 1A blocker, that is tamsulosin and silodosin. Okay, I hope you people liked this video, you people understood this video. Thank you. In our next video I'll talk about the beta adrenergic blockers.